Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This will be the continuation of Reformation. This will be part 6, chapters 7 and 8. Chapter 7. The Yakuza base was big, really big. Deku found himself sticking close to Toga's side as the pair had walked up to the front door. There were a set of guards at the door watching the two approach. As they got closer, Deku could see that the guards were eyeing them carefully, searching them for weapons. Not that they would see any. They were too good at hiding them. Toga skipped up to the guard, smiling. "Hi, we're here to see the boss man. Is he here?" "You're the people from the League of Villains," the first guard asked. "You can't be serious. You're both kids." "We've done more than you ever could. So how about you let us in before someone sees us, yeah?" Deku snapped, his voice sounding odd as it passed through the voice modulator of his mask. "Some of us here are pretty damn recognizable, and it sure ain't you." The second guard snorted. "He's got you there. All right, I'll show you the way. Follow me." As they walked through the halls, the guard's eyes kept flicking back to them. He finally spoke. "How old are you guys?" 106, Deku said, deadpan. The guard frowned, clearly trying to tell if he was serious or not. Toga giggled but didn't offer up any further information. "Not to be rude, kids, but are you sure about this? We're the Yakuza, you know. This is going to be dangerous." The guard paused, sighing. "I just don't want to see any more kids tied up in this." "Any more?" Toga said, cocking her head. Deku frowned behind his mask. "Are there kids in the Yakuza?" "Not typically. Not in the old days, at least," the guard said, his tone dark. He said nothing more as he led them to a door and knocked at it. From inside they heard movement, and then the door opened, revealing one of Overhaul's close subordinates, a group that called themselves the 8 Bullets. His beaked mask was worn proudly, the leather material almost gleaming. Deku recognized him immediately, and he hoped that Toga did too, considering he'd spent a good portion of the night teaching her everything he knew about Overhaul's inner circle and their quirks. He'd done all the research, back when he had first started hearing about quirk drugs, both enhancing and erasing, that had come onto the market. Deku wasn't about to let all that hard work of digging through shady websites and chat forums go to waste. The man before them was Shin Nimoto, Quirk Confession. He was the one they had to be careful with. Deku had quizzed Toga all night on how they could work around his quirk. "You're late," he snapped, glaring at the teens. "We were told to be here in the morning." "It's morning," Deku snapped. Toga glared at the man. "If you wanted us here at a certain time, you should have given us one." "It's 10 a.m. That's late in the morning. I would think that the League of Villains would be more prompt and eager to work than this." "Not with this one's sleep schedule," Toga said with a snort, elbowing Deku. "He's up all night and then crashes when the sun comes up. You're lucky to see him before noon." "None of the good stuff happens in the mornings. If I want to find anything decent online, I have to do it at night," Deku huffed, playing along with her shenanigans. He knew well enough that it was all a show that she was putting on to irritate the Yakuza. Nimoto had huffed before opening the door wider and letting them enter. The guard watched as the two teens had walked into the room. His expression conflicted, as though he had just allowed children to walk into a lion's den. In a way, he almost had. Deku scanned the room quickly, eyeing each person and cataloging them with their quirks. He saw the majority of the 8 Bullets, along with the leads of the Shigaraki. Overhaul sat on the couch. His quirk was obvious to both Deku and Toga, who had seen it in action. Then there was Chronostasis, the aid to the organization. His quirk was a dangerous one. You said to be hit by his clock hand like hair, and then you'd be slowed down. Depending on which clock hand you were hit with, would determine how slow you'd be. Then there was Mimic, the director. His quirk was called Mimicry, which would let him merge his body with an object and control it. It was a useful quirk, though the man's temper got the better of him more often than not, making him less of a threat than the others. Deep down, Deku knew that if they could get through this next bit, he and Toga would be just fine. They just had to trick Nimoto's quirk. Deku carefully kept his expression as neutral and non-threatening as possible as he came further into the room and dropped into the seat opposite Overhaul. Toga stayed standing, hovering at his shoulder. "Glad to meet again on more pleasant terms, Overhaul," he said. "Let's try to get to know each other. I'm Deku, and with my analysis I can read people's strengths, weaknesses, quirks, and so on. I need to be able to watch the person either face-to-face or video to be able to analyze them. You remember Toga, I'm sure. With Transform, she'll be able to turn herself into anyone that she drinks the blood of. The more blood that she drinks, the longer that she can appear as that person. Any questions?" Overhaul looked at them, a hint of surprise in his eyes. "You're rather forthcoming, aren't you? Does this mean that there are no hard feelings about Magne? I didn't want to kill him, you know." Toga hissed slightly, glaring. "You mean her?" Deku put a hand on Toga's arm. "He won't make the mistake again, Toga. Don't worry," he said, giving Overhaul a pointed look. "Now, it's pointless to beat around the bush, Overhaul. The more that you know about us, the quicker that you can put us to work, and the quicker that we can be done working here. So let me repeat myself. Do you have any questions for us?" There was a tense pause, everyone silent, and for the briefest moment, Deku was worried that everything was going to backfire. Finally, Overhaul turned and gave a short nod to Nemoto. Nemoto had turned, activating his quirk. "Did you tell us the truth?" he said, his voice almost hypnotic. Deku spoke before he could even think. "Yes, I told the truth." "Is there anything else that we need to know, or should know, about both of you and your quirks?" "No," Toga and Deku both said. Nemoto's quirk was watching over the pair of them. "And do either of you have a plan to betray us? Did Shigaraki tell you to double-cross Overhaul?" "No to both," Toga said, speaking up, and Deku nodded along with her. Most would not have noticed, but to Deku's trained eye, he could see Overhaul relax slightly in his seat. "Good. Now, I will have someone show you to your rooms. You'll be staying here in the house during the duration of our partnership." "Can we share a room?" Toga asked, smiling and flashing her fangs. "Deku-kun and I always share a room." "There would only be one bed." "I hardly sleep at night anyways, so it's not a big deal," Deku said with a wave of his hand. "We'd be happy to see the room now, though. I would like to get my laptop set up. After all, I'm best known for my hacking. I am assuming these skills will be put to use while I'm here." "Bakugo! Hey, wait up!" Kirishima called, chasing after Bakugo as the blonde had walked toward the dorms. "What do you want, shitty hair?" "I just wanted to check on you. Ever since your friend died, you've—" Bakugo spun around, snarling. "He wasn't my friend!" After seeing Kirishima's startled, almost scared expression, Bakugo sagged and hung his head. "He was my friend, really. We grew up together, and I was a dick to him. After everything with the training camp and the league wanting to kidnap me to convert me, I realized how much of an asshole I'd been to everyone in my life. Especially to Izuku. I mean, I had to be a pretty shitty excuse of a person for the villains to think that I'd ever join them. So I thought that maybe I could get better. I've been writing a letter to send him. An apology letter. I would have gone to talk to him in person, but I was pretty sure that he would have just run from me. Damn nerd was pretty scared of me by the end of middle school, but I couldn't get the fucking letter right. And now it doesn't matter. He's dead, and none of it fucking matters." Bakugo felt his eyes starting to burn, tears threatening to well. He squeezed them shut, ducking his head even further and bringing his shoulder up to his ears as he had balled his hands into fists, waiting for Kirishima to say something. Instead, he felt tentative fingers touching one of his fists, gently prying it open. Kirishima slipped his hand into Bakugo's, giving it a small squeeze. "I'm so sorry, Bakugo. You didn't get to say goodbye at all. That has to be really hard. Come on, how about we go up to my dorm and make a bunch of snacks, and you can tell me more about him. If you want, you can even read your letter to me. I can help you finish it, and we can take it to his grave and leave it there. How does that sound?" A shuddering breath had slipped from Bakugo's lips as he had sagged again, leaning forward just enough to press his forehead into Kirishima's shoulder. "Yeah, that sounds good. You better not tell anyone about this, though." "My lips are sealed, bro. Now come on. I bet if we hurry, we can grab some of those fancy candy bars that Yagirozu brought for everyone before Kaminari gets into them." Chapter 8. Deku frowned at the computer screen, his eyes red-rimmed. He sat back in his seat, barely suppressing a groan as his back had popped. Magna had always gotten on him about hunching over his computer while he worked. She would always tell him that he was going to ruin his back, or that he needed to get blue-light glasses to protect his eyes from the computer screen, or the reason he had trouble sleeping was because all of his screen time. Like the teenage boy he was, he didn't listen. Now she wasn't there to lecture him. As soon as he had arrived at the room he and Toga would be sharing, he began setting up his rig, which included a hotspot so he wouldn't be attached to the Yakuza's internet. It would be way too easy for them to track what he was doing if he was on their network. The Yakuza had left them alone for the rest of the day, saying there was business to attend to. That worked just fine for them. Toga sharpened her knives and doodled in one of Deku's notebooks while Deku had focused on his hacking work. He quickly finished up a few of the jobs that he had, and he sent them over to either Shigaraki or to Giron. Then he had switched to quietly drilling through the Yakuza's firewalls to see the details of what they were working on. It wasn't really a betrayal, so technically Deku hadn't lied when he was questioned. He just answered in half-truths. There was no plan to betray or to get back at the Yakuza, just a desire to. He hadn't been able to find anything concrete yet. After reading a few files on the creation of the quirk-erasing bullets, Deku had tried to find any information on the thing they called the source. Whatever this source was, it was finicky, and the material needed to create these bullets could only be extracted with Overhaul present. When Deku hit a dead end on that, he had switched to looking up a map of the facility. It wasn't until he found a map of the underground tunnels and labs that he found something of interest. There was a room simply labeled Lab 3. From the looks of the maps and blueprints, it was heavily secured, much more so than the other labs. It was also much smaller and appeared to have a tiny bathroom attached to it. There were sensors built into the walls and the door, not only tracking if someone came in, but if someone came out. In the hallway outside the door, there were numerous cameras, each angled so that there were virtually no blind spots, ensuring that no one could sneak up to the door. Inside the room, there were 3 cameras, including one in the bathroom. Lab 3 looked like a prison cell. Toga, wake up. Deku had whispered, turning in his seat to face the bed where Toga slept. She snuffled slightly and burrowed further under the blanket, rolling his eyes. Deku had picked up one of the pillows she had knocked off the bed and tossed it at her. As soon as the pillow made contact, she came up swinging, her knife glinting in the moonlight as it had arced through the air. Good. You're awake. Come look at this and tell me what you think. Huffing and cursing under her breath, she climbed out of the bed and came to stare at his laptop with blurry eyes. It's a map, she sighed. You woke me up to look at a map. No, this is the blueprint. If you want to look at the map, I can pull it up, but look here at this room. I think they are hiding something important here. I can get us in there if you want to check it out. Deku shook his head. I can probably pull up one of the camera feeds from inside the room. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't the only one who thought it was weird. Oh, it's definitely weird. Let's see the video. With a few keystrokes, Deku hacked one of the security cameras to pull up the feed. He was right. It was practically a jail cell. And inside was a little girl. She looked skinny, maybe a little too skinny, and her long curly white hair was tangled and messy. The girl was sitting on her bed, a few toys laying on the ground, barely touched. She had her knees drawn to her chest and arms wrapped around them, pulling herself into a tight ball. Her big red eyes were fixed on the door, as if she was waiting for something. When she shifted, making herself a little more comfortable, her hair had moved to reveal a little horn growing off-center from her forehead. Deku? Toga said, voice strained and barely above a whisper. What is that on her arms and legs? He swallowed thickly. Bandages. She's covered in bandages. I think they're experimenting on her, or something. We have to tell Shigaraki. We have to tell someone, but should we really tell him? Deku glanced up at Toga. Will Shigaraki actually help her? You always told me that he isn't the best when it comes to empathy and shit like that. That made Toga pause. Her eyes flicking between Deku and the girl on the computer screen, she bit at her lip while she thought, fidgeting with the knife in her hand. If we don't tell Shigaraki, who would we tell? You can't seriously be suggesting that we tell a hero. You and I both know they can't be trusted. We can't trust the Spotlight heroes. I know half of them are corrupt, and the other half are covering for the others. What about the underground heroes? They're heroes just to do good, not money or fame. And they take on cases that others won't touch. A case like this would be perfect for an underground hero. Deku said, gesturing to the computer screen as he finished. Toga nodded along, a pensive look on her face. Those guys are definitely true heroes. Steam would have approved of them. But what would the heroes do with her? Probably put her in witness protection. The Yakuza would want to try and get her back or kill her to keep her from talking. In witness protection, she could completely disappear and be safe. No one would have to know, and it would get back at Overhaul for what he had done to Magne and to Compass. I don't know, Toga said, shuffling nervously. Maybe we should still run the plan past Shigaraki. I really don't think we should. At least not yet. He's great at going up against heroes, and he'll do a great job reshaping Hero Society, but he wouldn't know what to do about a little girl being held captive by the Yakuza. If the underground heroes fail, then we can go to him. I guess you have a point. And if the heroes actually do save her, then we can always say that the heroes came before we could do anything. He doesn't have to know, but can he get a message out to a hero without anyone knowing? Deku snorted. Look at who you're talking to. Of course I can. Aizawa's phone had buzzed just as he had finished hauling Shinso up onto a rooftop after the teen had missed a jump. Sorry, Sensei, Shinso said, panting. Call me Eraserhead when we're working. Aizawa grumbled as he had pulled his phone out of his pocket. When he lit up the screen, he saw that he had an email, which was odd considering the time of night it was. The subject line simply read, To Eraserhead, which, under the circumstances, was rather ominous. A million different possibilities ran through Aizawa's head, from a missing student to a murdered husband. Immediately, Aizawa turned on the program he'd downloaded years ago to scan emails for any dangerous attachments. While that ran, he called Hisashi. Hello? Sho, you all right? Came Hisashi's sleepy voice. Hold on, I gotta grab my hearing aids. Aizawa breathed a sigh of relief. Sorry to scare you. Just wanted to check in. Everything's good on your end. Yeah, except for your fat cat trying to hog the bed. She's a menace. Nothing like my perfect angel boy. Keep telling yourself that. I'll talk to you later. As Aizawa hung up, Shinso gave him a curious look. Who was that? None of your concern, brat. Keep a lookout for a minute while I read this email. When he opened the email, there was an attachment and a short message. Shie Hasaikai Underground Labs. Get her out of there. Deku. Deku. Aizawa knew that name. Seeing that name made him feel like a bucket of ice water had been dumped over his head. The hero world had heard whispers about Deku, but nothing concrete. Some weren't even convinced that Deku existed. But here on his phone, Aizawa had proof. Deku was real. Against his better judgment, Aizawa opened the attachment to find a video. The timestamp showed it was from that day, only an hour before. It looked to be footage from a security camera, the angle high and wide, and the video grainy. A small girl with white hair and a short horn sat on her bed, wide-eyed and terrified. She looked too thin for Aizawa's comfort, and based on the bandages on her arms and legs, she was injured. Who's she? Aizawa nearly fumbled his phone, startled by Shinzo appearing at his shoulder so suddenly. At least he knew that Shinzo's stealth training had paid off. Thought I told you to keep a lookout. Yeah, but then you got a weird look on your face, so I wanted to see what was going on. Aizawa barely repressed the urge to roll his eyes as he had shoved his phone into his pocket. We're going back to campus. Now. Wow, Shinzo said, straightening to his full height. This is serious? Very. I need to speak with Nezu and show him this video. I want him to confirm it's real before I bring it up to Night Eye. Is this about the Yakuza? Aizawa nodded. Looks like it, and it may be tied to the League of Villains as well. I'll tell you more when we're at a secure location. I don't want to go into detail out in the open like this. Lead the way. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 8 of Reformation. Chapter 9 will be next. I hope you guys are enjoying this so far. Make sure you let me know your thoughts and reactions to these chapters, and as always, thank you so much for listening.